bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, so welcome to another SVT Dharma talk. And today we're going to look at excerpts from the Majjhima Nikāya, Majjhima Nikāya 140, the Dhātuvibhaṅgasutta, which is exploring the elements. And this is a very interesting sutta because it covers another way of thinking of the four foundations of practice and another perspective on what it means to, or the attitude to have towards practice. I'm going to start a little bit into the sutta. It's a very famous sutta. It's a sutta where the Buddha joins another monk in the potter's shed. And that monk is a devotee of the teacher of the Buddha, but has never met the Buddha himself. So he doesn't realize it's the Buddha that's talking to him. So the Buddha recognizes the devotion of this other monk, whose name is Pukkusāti, and so decides to give him a teaching. And I'm going to substitute the word bhikkhu for student here. So student, this person, okay, so this person, you can kind of see the Buddha pointing to this person here. This person consists of 6 elements, 6 bases of contact, and 18 kinds of mental exploration. And he has 4 foundations. So this sounds quite technical to start with. The tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over them, they are called a sage at peace. Now, the tides of conceiving are explained in more detail a little bit later in the sutta. But basically, we're talking about anything that I identify personally with here. One should not neglect wisdom, should preserve truth, should cultivate relinquishment, and should train for peace. This is the summary of the exposition of the 6 elements. So we've got these 4 foundations. They're very different to the 4 foundations that we recognize in terms of mindfulness, which is working with the body, working with feeling, working with the mind, and then mental states. So these 4 foundations are wisdom, truth, relinquishment, and peace. Student, this person consists of the 6 elements. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said, there are the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, the space element, and the consciousness element. So it was reference to this that it was said, students, this person consists of the 6 elements. Now, what's really important to recognize here is that the first 4 of these, and indeed aspects of the 5th as well, are about the physical body. So the physical body is an essential component to the practice. And sometimes we can, when we get very familiar with our meditation practice, we can tend to feel that it's a mental process only. We're developing the mind, we're developing our relationship to the mind and what the mind reveals through sort of conscious development. But here in this sutta, what the Buddha is saying is basically we've got to be grounded in the body as well. Student, this person consists of 6 bases of contact. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said, there are the base of eye contact, the base of ear contact, the base of nose, tongue, body, and mind contact. It was said with reference to this that the person consists of the 6 bases of contact. So here we're recognizing that the sense bases have a mental impact because contact occurs in the mind. So we have this direct relationship between the body and the mind. Students, this person consists of 18 kinds of mental exploration. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said? On seeing a form with the eye, one explores a form productive of joy. One explores a form productive of grief. So this is soma and doma. One explores a form productive of equanimity. So using the 6 sense bases, any form that we see with the eye, and the Buddha then went on to explain the other 6 sense bases, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and mind. What we have to do is investigate, explore, understand. Yeah? So when we explore something, if you imagine an unknown land and we're exploring it, we're looking to take something which is, if you like, not within our knowledge into our knowledge. So when we explore, we're constantly curious. What is this? What is that? How did this arise? How did that arise? What are the circumstances here? What is the context? Yeah, we can think of the context as the overall landscape as we're moving into a land. And we need to look at the things that are productive of joy, productive of grief, and productive of equanimity. So we just need to see what are the consequences of the conditions. How do we relate to the conditions and what occurs? What is our either reaction or response? So going through all of the 6 sense bases, we have to be mindful of joy arising, grief arising, or equanimity arising, and those circumstances. Student, this person has 4 foundations, so it was said. And with reference to what was this said? There are the foundation of wisdom, of truth, of relinquishment, and of peace. One should not neglect wisdom, should preserve peace, truth, should cultivate relinquishment, and train for peace. So I think this is a very important sentence here. Should not neglect wisdom. So how do we allow our practice to go from just experience into wisdom? Because we can have a lot of experiences in our practice. And unless we allow them to become wisdom, we're simply collecting experiences. So we should not neglect wisdom. We should preserve truth. We should cultivate relinquishment. So preserving truth is about our relationship to our experience. Cultivating relinquishment is an action. We need to actively cultivate relinquishment and train for peace. In other words, this is the direction that we're going in. How, student, does one not neglect wisdom? There are these 6 elements: the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, the space element, and the consciousness element. So here the Buddha is identifying the elements as fundamental to wisdom. What, student, is the earth element? The earth element may be either internal or external. What is the internal earth element? Whatever internally belonging to oneself is solid, solidified, clung to, that is, head hairs, body hairs, nails, teeth, flesh, sinews, skin, bones, bone marrow, kidneys, heart, liver, diaphragm, spleen, lungs, intestines, mesentery, contents of the stomach, feces, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself, that is solid, solidified, clung to. This is called the internal earth element. Now, both the internal earth element and the external element are simply earth element. So what they're saying here is that the fact that the quality of earth element is not a personal one, whether it's internal or external, it is the same earth element. The fact that the conditions have arisen so that some of them are internal at this moment does not make them personal. There is no distinction between the internal or external. They should be simply viewed as earth element. That should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. When one sees it thus, it is actually with this proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted. So what is this disenchantment? Well, the enchantment that we've been under is that these were personal. And so when we begin to see them as impersonal, we become disenchanted. They no longer have that enchanting quality of personal identity. So one becomes disenchanted with the earth element and makes the mind dispassionate. So we don't make it, proper wisdom makes it. So when we see with proper wisdom, the mind becomes dispassionate. And so what does dispassionate mean? Well, it means that we no longer have an emotional connection. Dispassionate passion is around acting from a place of emotion. So we no longer have an emotional connection with this earth element. And that comes by seeing that it's nothing to do with me. It's not a personal aspect towards the earth element. So we can sometimes see this in our own practice. So if we, for instance, if we just close our eyes right now and listen to the sense of contact with the ground. Now that might be through the seat of a chair or sitting on the floor, soles of your feet. Now we can think of ourselves as sitting on the chair or on the floor, and there's a distinction. But if we just go into the body and stay with the body sensation, is there a sense of hardness or softness? Is it warm or cool? Is it vibrating or still? Does it stay the same or does it change over time? And if we stay seeing these qualities of the elements, what happens to that sense of separation between me and what I'm in contact with? And we begin to see that there's a blurring of boundary here. And so with our own practice, we can begin to see that the quality of earth is not distinct. There isn't a my earth element and the ground or the chair's earth element. So the Buddha then goes on to talk about the water element in the same way. The fire element, the air element. All of these should be seen as this is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. What student is the space element? The space element may be either internal or external. What is the internal space element? Whatever internally belongs to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. That is the holes of the ears, the nostrils, the door of the mouth, that aperture whereby what is eaten, drunk, consumed, and tasted gets swallowed, and where it collects, and whereby it is excreted from below, or whatever else internally belonging to oneself is space, spatial, and clung to. This is called the internal space element. So we see it as an internal one because we cling to it. It's internal to us. If we don't cling to it, it's simply the space element. Now, both the internal space element and the external space element are simply space element. And that should be seen as it actually is with proper wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. When one sees it as it actually is with proper wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with the space element and makes the mind dispassionate towards the space element. Then there remains only consciousness, purified and bright. What does one cognize with that consciousness? One cognizes this is pleasant. One cognizes this is painful. One cognizes this is neither painful nor pleasant. So this is feeling Vedana. So once we've moved away from this identity with the space, with the elements, the consciousness element is able to see our response and reaction to any of the others. And it sees that either as pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant or unpleasant. When one feels a pleasant feeling, one understands, I feel a pleasant feeling. One understands with the cessation of that same contact to be felt as pleasant, its corresponding feeling, the pleasant feeling that arose in dependence on that contact, to be felt as pleasant, ceases and subsides. So what we're seeing here directly is dependent origination. We're seeing the link between contact and feeling. And when the contact changes, the feeling changes. So there's a direct dependency between these. In dependence on contact to be felt as painful, there arises a painful feeling. When one feels a painful feeling, one understands, I feel a painful feeling. One understands with the cessation of that same contact to be felt as painful, its corresponding feeling, the painful feeling that arose in dependence on that contact to be felt as painful, ceases and subsides. So we notice this in our meditation. We get to perhaps a certain stage of understanding in our practice, something called the jhanas, where contact in the body changes. And when contact in the body changes, any sense of discomfort in the body, unpleasant feeling in the body disappears. So often people feel this in perhaps the third jhana or the fourth jhana. And we're seeing that the nature of the contact changes, and suddenly everything that was perhaps causing us some discomfort or distress or challenge in the practice, suddenly the body becomes much more easeful and stable. Independence on a contact to be felt as neither painful nor pleasant. There arises a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. When one feels a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, one understands, I feel a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So, in our practice, what is this neither painful nor pleasant feeling? Well, remember that as we move into fourth jhana, what drops away? What is relinquished? What's relinquished is anything painful or anything pleasant. And what's left? Equanimity. So this awareness of this neither painful nor pleasant is the presence of equanimity, if it's seen with wisdom. Otherwise, neither painful nor pleasant is kind of seen with indifference. We pass through a lot of our daily life in a state of indifference, unaware that we don't have a painful or a pleasant feeling. But in the meditation, or when we maintain a meditative attitude in daily life, we become aware that equanimity is here right now. So this is the relationship to neither pleasant nor painful. One understands with the cessation of that same contact to be felt as neither painful nor pleasant, its corresponding feeling, the neither painful nor pleasant feeling that arose in dependence on that contact to be felt as neither painful nor pleasant, ceases and subsides. Student, just as the contact and friction of two fire sticks, heat is generated and fire is produced. And with the separation and disjunction of these two fire sticks, the corresponding heat ceases and subsides. So too, in dependence on a contact to be felt as pleasant, to be felt as painful, to be felt as neither painful nor pleasant, there arises a neither painful nor pleasant feeling. One understands with the cessation of that same contact to be felt as neither painful nor pleasant, its corresponding feeling ceases and subsides. So the two sticks rubbing together, this is contact and feeling. If you separate them, in other words, the contact disappears, the feeling disappears, there's no fire. Okay. Then there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Suppose, student, a skilled goldsmith or their apprentice were to prepare a furnace, heat up the crucible, take some gold with tongs and put it into the crucible. From time to time, he would blow on it. From time to time, he would sprinkle water over it. And from time to time, he would just look on. That gold would become refined, well refined, completely refined, faultless, rid of dross, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. Then, whatever kind of ornament he wished to make of it, whether a gold chain or earrings or a necklace or a golden garland, it would serve his purpose. So too, students, there remains only equanimity, purified and bright, malleable, wieldy, and radiant. So this is a lovely metaphor for the mind. As we work with the mind in this way, the mind becomes more wieldy. It has this description here, becomes refined, well refined, completely refined, faultless. Yeah, it becomes malleable, wieldy, and radiant. So as the gold, so also the mind. And this is the state in the fourth jhana of the equanimity. We've developed the mind to be a particular way. They understand thus, if I were to direct this equanimity so purified and bright to the base of infinite space and to develop my mind accordingly, then this equanimity of mind supported by that base, clinging to it, would remain for a very long time. So here, there's a warning. We've developed the quality of the mind. It's very responsive to what our intention is. And if our intention is to hold on to a state, so for here, the state of infinite space, the mind is simply going to do that. When you when you've refined the gold, you have not defined the ornament that it's going to make. It's a potential. And we have to be very careful about what direction we then send the mind in. So just like the Buddha said, this cultivated gold in this malleable and wieldy and well-refined gold can be used to make anything. And so we need to understand that intention is really, really important. And that's where intention needs to be very clear, because it's part of the conceiving that we talked about at the start of the sutta. And we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. So now the primacy, having cultivated the mind, is what is our intention? how is the mind to be directed, and what is the context that we're going to develop? If I were to direct this equanimity so purified and bright to the base of infinite consciousness, or to the base of nothingness, or to the base of neither perception nor non-perception, and to develop my mind accordingly, then this equanimity of mind supported by that base, clinging to it, would remain for a very long time. So we have to be very careful in our practice. What is the basis that we're going to practice from? Are we looking to attain states because we identify that certain states mean progress? But what this is suggesting is that states in themselves are not necessarily the progress we're looking for. They are attainments of certain capacity by all, yeah, absolutely. But what is the direction we're trying to go in? And this is why the 4 foundations are really important. They understand thus: if I were to direct this equanimity, so purified and bright, to the base of infinite space, and develop, maybe I've learned that already, no, and develop my mind accordingly, this would be conditioned. So here's the wisdom coming in now. Recognizing that if I aspire to certain states, I'm aspiring to something conditioned. And our intention is to move to the unconditioned. Right? So rarefied states can feel like real progress because they're novel, new, and different to our everyday experience. And they are a mental development. But there are many forms of mental development. And the Buddha is inviting us to move our mental development into a particular direction. If I were to direct this equanimity so purified and bright to the base of infinite consciousness, to the base of nothingness, to the base of neither perception nor non-perception, and to develop my mind accordingly, this would be conditioned. They do not form any condition or generate any volition, act of will, tending towards either being or non-being. Okay, so what the Buddha is describing here is that any act of will, any volition towards any state, either being or non-being, is not going to help us in this practice. Okay. And that's really an important, a very important statement here. Since they do not form any condition or generate any will tending towards either being or non-being, they do not cling to anything in this world. When they do not cling, they are not agitated. When they are not agitated, they personally attain Nibbana. They understand thus: birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, and what had to be done has been done. There is no more coming to any state of being. Okay. So, this state, this direction that we're moving towards, right? What's important to understand here is that if we have any intention, chaitana, any volition, any intention about the direction in the practice, okay, we're working against ourselves. That doesn't mean that we can't have a wholesome intention around why we practice. But once we're in the practice, we simply need to observe what is going on. When we're in this state, and here it's suggesting that this will take us all the way through to Nibbana. But even in this state of nirvana, and in this passage, this reference to nirvana means the arahant. If we're at that state, if they feel a pleasant feeling, they understand this is impermanent. There is no holding to it. There is no delight in it. If they feel a painful feeling, they understand this is impermanent. There is no holding to it. There is no delight in it. If they feel neither painful nor pleasant feeling, they understand it is impermanent. There is no holding to it. There is no delight to it. So what's really helpful here is to understand that even the arahant will still have this range of feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neither pleasant nor unpleasant. Because these are impersonal experiences. If they feel a pleasant feeling, they feel it detached. If they feel a painful feeling, they feel it detached. If they feel a neither painful nor pleasant feeling, they feel it detached. So, detached from what? Detached from the identity of self. This isn't my painful feeling. This isn't my pleasant feeling. This isn't my neither painful nor pleasant feeling. They're simply feeling. Just like we were being invited in the elements to see it, that it was simply the earth element, simply the water element. Here we're being asked to see that it is simply feeling. When they feel a feeling terminating with the body, they understand a feeling terminating with the body. When they, whilst there's a bodily feeling, this is a sensation or a feeling that they have. We feel discomfort, perhaps in the early practice, early stages of practice as we're going through the jhanas, but we get to a point where the perception of the body changes and then the uncomfortable feeling associated with the body becomes different. And the practice becomes comfortable. So this is a feeling terminated with the body. If I feel a feeling, when they feel a feeling terminating with life, they understand a feeling terminating with life. So this simply means that whilst we're in a living body, there will be certain feelings. And when the body comes to the point of no longer being alive, these feelings will disappear. But until the body is no longer alive, these feelings are still going to be there. They understand on the dissolution of the body, with the ending of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. Students, just as an oil lamp burns in dependence on oil and a wick, when the oil in the wick are used up, if it does not get any more fuel, it is extinguished from lack of fuel. So too, when they feel a feeling terminating with the body or a feeling terminating with life, they understand a feeling terminating in this way. They understand on the dissolution of the body, with the ending of life, all that is felt, not being delighted in, will become cool right here. So this is for the arahant, because there is no forward projection after death in the context of where these feelings would manifest again. Therefore, a student possessing this wisdom, possessing the supreme foundation of wisdom, possesses the supreme foundation of wisdom. For this student is the supreme noble wisdom, namely, the knowledge of the destruction of all suffering. So, the wisdom has come from the elements, from consciousness, and then from the equanimity. So, the elements are in the body. So the body is a very important aspect of the practice, not something to be ignored. Now, as the practice develops, the impact of the body changes as we begin to move through the jhanas. But remember, whenever we get hijacked by the mind, we get flipped out of the jhanas. And so when we get flipped out of the jhanas, we're back in the body. We're aware of the contact. We're aware of all the different elements. So then, to cultivate wisdom, we work with our relationship to the body, to bring us back into the jhana. So if we identify with the body when we get kicked out, we'll stay kicked out. So we have to work with this non-identification with the body. And one of the ways we can do that is working with the energetic, because coming back into this energetic support allows us to deeply relax our physical body. And when we deeply relax our physical body, our sense of attachment to what's going on diminishes. The sense of identity with what's going on diminishes. Why? Because the energetic body cannot be supported whilst we have that identity. So we need to be able to move away from the physical body without rejecting it. It's not an aversive response. It's about seeing it as it really is, as described in the suttas, seeing the earth element as simply earth, not as my earth and something exterior as being a different earth. Seeing the connection that they are one and the same. So if we have any discomfort in the body, for instance, we can soften around the edges. And what that does is it allows that identity, the edges of that discomfort are where we hold the identity. This is my discomfort. And we move from that aversion or to a holding on into acceptance. And the acceptance is allowing it to be there. Acceptance means it can stay, it can go, I don't mind. So there's no holding on or rejection. Their deliverance being founded, this is the wisdom side. Now we're moving to the truth. Their deliverance being founded upon truth, because it's founded on direct observation. So here's the foundation of truth that's been coming from wisdom. When we see things clearly, we understand how things really are. And when we see things as they really are, this is truth. So Bhante Vimramsi would often say that when we fight with the truth, when we want the truth to be a different truth, when we want the truth to be different to what it really is, that's what creates dukkha. And so whatever is observed in the present, seen clearly, this is the truth. And there can't be anything wrong with the truth because it's the truth. So then the question is, what is our relationship to the truth? And our relationship to the truth is, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not my own. So their deliverance, being founded upon truth, is unshakable. 4, that is false, student, which has a deceptive nature. And that is true, which has an undeceptive nature, nibbana. Therefore, a student possessing this truth possesses the supreme foundation of truth. For this student is the supreme noble truth, namely nibbana, which has an undeceptive nature. So anything that's moving us towards an understanding of nibbana, this is the truth that we need to observe and see clearly. Formerly, when they were ignorant, they understood and accepted acquisitions. Now, this is a very interesting statement. What are acquisitions? Well, the pali here is upadhi. And you can think of upadhi as the aggregates, the khandhas, the body, feeling, perception, the sankharas, consciousness. You can think of it as the defilements, because this also is something that we acquire, we hold on to. We can think of it as the response or the reaction to sensual pleasure, or any of the willed activities that we go through. They are also have the possibility of attachment and acquisition. So remember, any of the willed formations, any of the volitional formations, anything that the mind can drop. So that could be loving kindness, it could be anger, it could be disappointment, it could be equanimity, it could be happiness, anything that comes through. In fact, the volitional formations are essentially anything that is not feeling, perception, or consciousness. So think of all the activities of the mind, and all of those have this possibility of being will states, things that we've chosen to develop or wish to develop or want to develop. So these acquisitions can be considered as these aggregates, the defilements, the volitional formations, or the simple connection to sensual pleasure. But also we can think of it more generally as anything that we can be attached to, anything that we can take personally, identify as me, mine, or my own. Yeah. Anything that gives us a sense of identification or ownership. And sometimes these simpler explanations are easier to grasp. Yeah. So Bhante Vimramsi would describe this as anything that was the I like it or I don't like it mind. I want it, I don't want it mind. So apādi in that context is very similar to craving. But what's interesting is it has this acquisitional concept, which I find very useful. So we're accreting things, we're adding things on. And what the Buddha is saying here is formally, when a person was ignorant, they undertook and accepted acquisitions. And acquisitions could be also insights. I've had this insight. I've had this, and if we, a bit like the raft, if we take this on and carry it with us, it's an acquisition. Yeah. Now they have abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they are no longer to future arising. Okay, now what is this process of doing away with them? Well, this is relinquishment. And this is what, in these four foundations, needs to be cultivated. So the practice needs, we've gone from wisdom, seeing things clearly, understanding truth. So what's the process of doing this? Cultivating relinquishment. So in the practice, we need to, if you like, to take a perspective of relinquishment rather than acquisition. And what is the relinquishment? Well, here the working with the jhanas is very helpful because we see that we don't enter into the first jhana unless we relinquish the hindrances. The hindrances and the jhanas cannot operate in the same space. And then we move from first jhana to second jhana, not by trying to acquire the second jhana, but by relinquishing vitakka and vichara. Yes. This initial and sustained thought. And we move from the second jhana to the third jhana by relinquishing an attachment to the sense of uplifting joy, piti. And so sometimes, when we're meditating, we can feel like the meditation has dropped away because the joy is gone. Yeah. And when that happens, we can feel that moving from the first jhana to the second jhana, the vitakka vichara drops down. That's when we go into the noble silence. And from second jhana to third jhana, that's when the joy, the piti, drops down. And when we let the piti drop out, we can feel, or when we observe it dropping out, we can feel that our practice isn't working anymore. Well, that's shown us that we had a subtle attachment to the joy. We had treated the joy as an acquisition. My practice is not as good now because it hasn't got this. Whereas we need to turn that perception around on its head and see that the practice is relinquished joy. And equally, when we move from the third jhana to the fourth jhana, we relinquish the pleasant feeling that the third jhana gives us, that sense of comfort and ease, which is really, really an attractive state to be in. It's like, this is a good place to be. And then we move into equanimity, which has neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So we've relinquished again. And we need to observe our practice in this way to cultivate the idea of relinquishment. Now, the Buddha accepted that relinquishment is quite a sort of counter-cultural thing. So one of the things that he said was most helpful in laity is to develop generosity. Because if we develop generosity, we begin to develop and see the benefits of relinquishment. So we have generosity. The act of generosity is one of dana. But increasingly, the process of dana gets accompanied with a mental sort of concomitant state, which is chaga. And chaga is this relinquishment. And so, when the Buddha describes the different states of giving, as you work through the different states of giving, what we notice behind all of that is that there's, if you like, an increasing development of relinquishment. So here was something that he saw as a practical thing that we could do in daily life, which would encourage us in this aspect of relinquishment. So what is the aspect of relinquishment? Well, let's just think about the going through the jhanas, giving up the sense of joy. We're actually giving up something we like. We're allowing that to disappear. So we're relinquishing something which, if you like, has is giving us something, is something that we are potentially attached to, that feels useful to us, but we're also seeing that it's conditioned and allowing it to release. And so the process of dana is also, if you like that. It is the process of giving something which we also could see that we might be attached to, but we choose to let it go. And that's an important aspect of moving through this mental development, because the jhanas have qualities which are deeply attractive. And this is important to understand. But the jhanas themselves, apart from the fact that they are free of the hindrances, they don't have the quality of wisdom. Freedom from the hindrances is a potential. It's a way of, think of the gold again. We're developing the gold so that it's malleable. But then the wisdom comes from seeing and understanding the nature of relinquishment, cultivating that process. So we can develop the jhanas on an acquisitional basis. And we can develop the jhanas on a relinquishment basis. And what part of the beauty of the Bhante Vimalaramsi's teaching is that the 6 R's, if they're practiced as Bhante Vimalaramsi described, are an act of relinquishment. They're cultivating the mind to relinquish. But as with anything in mental development, you can cultivate it, you can use the same tool for a different purpose. So Bhante Viramsī was very careful to say, do not use the 6 R's as a way of beating down the mind or controlling mind states. They're there to understand mind states. So we understand the process of the mind taking something personally, moving to the unwholesome, and coming back to the wholesome. So we see ourselves taking out the sense of identity to come back. But you could use the 6 R's as a way of controlling the mind, suppressing a mind state. So sometimes Bhante Viramsī would say, don't overdevelop each step of the 6 R's. Don't over concentrate on one step and try and keep it going, and then the next and keep it going. Try and let it just roll through, because what he was interested in is seeing the process in the mind that's going on, to see how we relinquish and come back into balance, rather than how we're controlling each individual state. So if we overemphasize just relaxing, for instance, and coming back, yes, the mind will get very calm, but it won't develop the wisdom that is the release of the unwholesome and the substitution of the wholesome. So just relaxing is not going to take us the same place as working with the whole of the 6 R's. And Bhante Dhammagavesi he often recounts a story where he was practicing before he fully committed to Bhante Viramsī and ordained under him, working just with the release, relax, release, relax, release, relax. And he said, hey, he could sit for long periods. He was very comfortable, very easeful. And he said, and after he came out of doing that for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever, the calm effect would last for a little while, and then he would find himself reacting to the hindrances again with the same potency as before he did the retreat. And that's what was his instigation to go and join Bhante Viramsī and ordain unto him, to understand this process further. So we have to be very careful that we understand what the 6 R's represent, and that we apply it in a way that encourages, cultivates this relinquishment. Okay. I'm just going to reread the last paragraph. Formerly, when they were ignorant, they undertook and accepted acquisitions. Now they abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, did away with them, so that they no longer subject to future arising. Therefore, a student possessing this relinquishment possesses the supreme foundation of relinquishment. For this student is the supreme noble relinquishment, namely the relinquishing of all acquisitions. Formerly, when they were ignorant, they experienced covetousness, desire, and lust. Now they have abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Formerly, when they were ignorant, they experienced anger, ill will, and hate. Now they have abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Formerly, when they were ignorant, they experienced ignorance and delusion. Now they have abandoned them, cut them off at the root, made them like a palm stump, done away with them, so that they are no longer subject to future arising. Therefore, a student possessing this peace possesses the supreme foundation of peace. For this student is the supreme noble peace, namely the pacification of lust, hatred, and delusion. So, having gone from cultivated the relinquishment, this means that they recognize, the student recognizes how they experience covetousness, if you know, wanting something, the desire and lust. They experience how they had anger, ill will, and hate, and how they've abandoned them through the process of relinquishment, and how this was cultivated the sense of ignorance and delusion, and how this has enabled that to be abandoned. And by doing that, they've cultivated the supreme noble peace. So it was with reference to this that it was said, one should not neglect wisdom. So remember, wisdom came from working with the elements, working with consciousness, working with equanimity. Should preserve truth. So when you start seeing clearly as a consequence of that, we start understanding the truth of the teaching. Should cultivate relinquishment. This is the action which develops this, and should train for the purpose of peace. In other words, the release from greed, hatred, and delusion. The tides of conceiving. So if you remember, we talked about the tides of conceiving right at the start. Do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over them, they are called a sage at peace. So it was said, and with reference to what was this said? Students, I am is a conceiving. I am this is a conceiving. I shall be is a conceiving. I shall not be is a conceiving. I shall be possessed of form is a conceiving. I shall be formless is a conceiving. I shall be percipient, perceptually aware is a conceiving. I shall be non-percipient is a conceiving. I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient is a conceiving. Conceiving is a disease, a tumor, a dart. By overcoming all conceivings, student, one is called a sage at peace. And the sage at peace is not born, does not age, does not die, is not shaken, does not yearn. For there is nothing present in them by which they might be born. Not being born, how could they age? Not aging, how could they die? Not dying, how could they be shaken? Not being shaken, why should they yearn? So the conceiving ranges from the subtlest, almost pre-perceptual, pre-conscious seeds of identity in any experience, right through to the grossest form of identification with what I'm doing or what I possess, you know, at the grossest material level. It's the whole spectrum. Okay, so this is very helpful because it means we can work with the whole spectrum as this is expressed in our own lives. We see our attachment at a gross level to something, and we can reflect on that. This is conceiving. And then we can see the most subtle attachment. You know, maybe we're sitting in meditation and we have this subtle wanting or a subtle attachment to an experience, or we might feel that we've had an insight and we kind of go, oh, I now know. And this I now know is another conceiving. It covers the whole spectrum of our experience. So it was with reference to this that it was said, the tides of conceiving do not sweep over one who stands upon these foundations. And when the tides of conceiving no longer sweep over them, they are called a sage at peace. Student, bear in mind this brief exposition of the 6 elements. So that's where I'd like to finish. There's more to the sutta, and it's a very worthwhile sutta to read. But here we have a different definition of the 4 foundations. And the 4 foundations really are a very wonderful exploration around the nature of practice. We should not neglect wisdom. So if we feel we've had insights, but they haven't translated into behavioral change, then for me, this is not wisdom. They've become an intellectual understanding, like lots of intellectual ideas. But if they have not become embodied, so that they are part of our experience of our everyday, then they're not wisdom. So we need not to neglect the understanding of wisdom. We need to preserve truth. So with the clear-sightedness, we need to see how that reinforces time and time again our understanding of what truth is, helping to preserve the perspective of truth within ourselves. We need to cultivate relinquishment. We need to get away from the idea that we're acquiring knowledge, we're acquiring states. And the way I like to think of this for myself is that the direction that I'm going in requires me to divest myself of things rather than to accumulate more. So there's an innate understanding that comes when, if you like, we take the veils off rather than try to look through the veils more intently. And this whole process is a training in the direction of peace. And I find this group of 4 a very helpful reflection whenever I'm in my formal practice, but also in daily life, because I can say to myself, where's the wisdom in this situation right now? How is that supporting the truth? Has this come about from a state of relinquishment, or am I trying to hold on and acquire something? This is very, very basic stuff in daily life. And is this process moving me in the direction of something which is more peaceful, or towards more agitation, as was described in the sutta? Okay, so let's just take a few moments. Just feel the sense of contact with the ground, wherever it is, through the seat of the chair, or if you're sitting on the floor. And let's simply set ourselves up. So softly rotate the inner thighs, that medial rotation, just enough to release out your hips. Invite the energetic center to be present. So this is 3 fingers below the navel, halfway into the body. It's a natural energetic center, which if we give it permission, will give us the structure, support, space in our practice. But now, having done that, relax your body into that energetic support. Drop the inner edge of the shoulder blades. So part of the shoulder blades closest to the spine, just let that drop. And it's a rotation of the shoulders, not a pulling down of the shoulders. It's a rotation of the shoulder blades. And notice how that cultivates a sense of space. around your heart. With the rotation in the thighs and the relaxing of the hips, there's space in the sacrum, space in the lower torso. The energetic supports you so you don't have to contract. Contraction is a state of squeezing space out. Softly smile. Let your body come back into balance. Relax the crown of your head. Soften around your brain. Bring up the feeling of loving kindness and continue your practice, either directing to loving kindness to yourself or your friend, spiritual friend, or working with the directions and allowing that feeling of loving kindness to evolve and change according to your practice. If you notice your mind's distracted, release away from distraction. Redirect your attention to an awareness of the elements in the body. So Bhante Vimramsi would say, be aware of the tension around your physical brain and relax that. Well, that's the physical body. And then also relax any tension in the body. Now, how do we do that? Because if we're working just in the physical body, if we relax all tension, we'll tend to slump. So come back into your energetic body and then relax your body. There's no slumping. And you don't have to choose what physical tension to release. Just release all physical tension. Softly smile. Let your heart open in all directions. Drop the inner edge of your shoulder blades. Softly rotate your inner thighs. Come back to the feeling of loving kindness. Gently smile. Be aware of the contact with the floor. Is it hard or soft, warm or cool, vibrating or still? Does it change over time or stay the same? Be aware of the sense of space in your body. Take a deliberate breath in and out. And softly and gently open your eyes. Okay, so any questions at the end of this sutta? Yes, May.
Thank you, Hugh. I have a quick question. You know, the second last paragraph, the one where students, I am is a conceiving, I am this is a conceiving, la 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 la. I was trying to figure out the word percipient. So when I Googled the meaning of percipient as a noun, it said, especially in philosophy or with reference to psychic phenomena, is a person who is able to perceive things, and that didn't really jive with me. So what would be your understanding of that? I shall be percipient, I shall be non-percipient, I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient. Does that mean like when we start to think that, oh, I am perceiving that phenomenon as da da da?
What it's saying here is that the idea that I shall be something is a conception. So the idea that I can choose to perceive something, or I can choose not to perceive something, is an attachment, because we're not in charge of our perception. Okay, perception comes from contact. And contact gives feeling. But remember that when feeling arises, what a concomitant to those is perception and consciousness at the same time. Feeling, perception, consciousness comes up at the same time as a consequence of contact. And so to say that I shall perceive or I shall not perceive is a conceiving, in the sense that you're not in charge of that. It's part of the automatic process. We can say or have an aspiration not to crave, but we can't have an aspiration not to perceive. Because not to perceive would require there not to be contact. And we're
Yeah,
not in charge of whether there's contact or not.
yeah. And when you said earlier that we can make the aspiration to not crave, is that like just setting the direction or setting the intention of our practice in the beginning?
Yeah, having an intention to understand the conditionality of craving, and that it's reliant upon our taking something personally, this identification. So what happens, we have a feeling and we make it me, mine, or my own. This is the I like it, I don't like it, I want it, I don't want it mind. So even with the arahant, in verse 23, the arahant feels a pleasant feeling, but understands it's impermanent. So they will have perceived a pleasant feeling. And then they will have perceived an unpleasant feeling. So feeling, perception, and consciousness would have been there in the arahant. So it's not possible to say, I will not perceive, I shall not perceive, or to determine what I shall perceive, because perception is conditioned and we're not in charge of the conditions.
Okay. Yeah. And when you mentioned the last sentence about us saying to ourselves, I mean, understanding that I have no control over what I perceive or what I, how I perceive things. It's the same as how everyone basically has no control. Even if they think they do, they have no control over their perceptions, which time and again links me back to the Honey Bowl Sutta, which I really like, in the beginning, where the king Dandapani was like, having this conversation with the Buddha, and then kind of asking the Buddha, what if noble ones and kings and princes and all that start to argue with each other? What are your thoughts about that? And the Buddha just kind of said, well, there's nothing much that can be done, in terms of mediating that argument, because what he was trying to say after that, and this is my understanding of the Honey Bowl Sutta, is that what the Buddha was trying to explain to the king Dandapani was that everyone has their own perceptions depending on how they've been conditioned. And if they're not training their mind and understanding dependent origination, it makes no sense to mediate any kind of argument whatsoever. It's my understanding of the Honey Bowl Sutta.
I think what's really important, what you're picking up here, is that when there's no recognition of dependent origination, then each person perceives their perspective as truth, and there's the problem, because the underlying truth is that the dependent origination, certain things arise because the conditions were right for them to be there, and when the conditions change, these things disappear. And any attachment to views in that context is unreliable. And so the first thing to do is to listen to ourselves, and by extension then to listen to others. And the wisdom comes realizing that they're coming from a place of imbalance, and I may be coming from a place of imbalance. And then that's the basis to start to move forward. What we're not recognizing is that process of imbalance creating the separation, which then brings conflict or discord or whatever else is happening.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. And that's that then leads on to the tools that we're given, like the simile of the soul, meditate like water, and things like that, because of what you just said. These tools, if we practice them, will help us not take things personally. This is how I see it. Yeah.
If the tools are not helping us not taking things personally, we have to ask ourselves, what is our relationship to the tools? So if we develop a sense of satisfaction and attachment to the insights or the experiences of our meditation, then that's not helping us take things impersonally, because we're holding on. They may be very subtle states, but we're still holding on. The process is still the same. And so we get back to this sort of very familiar phrase of, sit down as if for the first time. In other words, have no expectations, have no projections, simply see things as they are. Sister Kima used to have a wonderful little phrase about this state of mind. She said, you need to be like a little 3-year-old who's just poking their head around the corner to see what's going on. to have that sense of curiosity this time around something that's going on. And when you look at young children, they're endlessly curious in what for adults has become very ordinary or even invisible. And we have to be very careful in our meditation not to let that sense of, this is ordinary, this is what we're used to, inhabit our meditation. Our meditation needs to be constantly reaffirming the clear-sightedness and the sense of understanding of truth. So this wisdom is what's really, really important. And how is that being integrated into our daily life? And so what we see here is a description of using the elements as an aspect of this development of wisdom. And so what we could say is, how have we embodied our understanding? Because through this embodiment of our understanding is how we inhabit it in daily life. Otherwise, it's an idea. And then when some other more cogent idea or something else distracts us, we've lost this until we bring it back. So, when we begin to embody it, we begin to see it in a way which is where the way we inhabit daily life constantly reminds us of this process. Yeah. Okay. So, hello, Pi. How did you get on? Okay. Did you have any observations from the actual sutta itself? This kind of different structure to the four foundations. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay. So you like the meditation at the end? I think the meditation is very helpful, just to bring the experience of the sort of talk back into our practice. So Ritesh and Jani, very good to see you. Any observations?
Okay. So it came at a very interesting time. I was just discussing with Chandni 2 days back about the attachment to practice itself. And like, even though the practice itself is not trying to acquire states, but what results are at least at times fairly pleasant experiences. And when you come out, the mind does this automatic comparison between the chaos of non-meditation life, so to say, and the the hours on a seat or a cushion. And I was talking to her about, like, it happens so automatically that to even look at it, because you're getting something so pleasant there by doing so less, and life itself is much more, you got to do things, you have to put in effort into things. And how do you work with that?
Well, I think part of the key of this is something that May said, reminding us about meditation like water. So when we come out of this, sometimes there's in the suttas, there's this description of meditation being like a still lake.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come out of the meditation and we're in this sort of turbulent mountain stream. It's splashing around and avoiding moving around boulders and all the rest of it. And if in the when we're experiencing it as a mountain stream, all we're looking for is the lake. We're going to, if we're working with that comparison, we're just going to be with disappointment. irritation, annoyance, resentment. Water is water. And it has many different qualities. And one of them is its capacity to be still. And one of its capacity is to flow around obstacles. And we need to develop our meditation to relate to both of those. Because the meditation is being like water, not being like a lake.
Yeah.
Okay? So when the circumstances are such, we need to be like the mountain stream. And when circumstances are such, we need to be like a lake. But we need to be like water. Okay? The lake and the mountain streams are expressions of certain conditions. The wateriness of water is the same.
I quite enjoyed the comparison of elements outside. I mean, the 5 elements within you, and like both internal and external, because I feel like there's typically an attachment to one of the two sides. Like you feel like the external is very pleasant, but then you don't feel the same way inside, and that causes a resistance. Or it's the other way around. You're very very much at comfort with what's inside, and then you don't find it outside, and then that's where it meets resistance. But then, like when you break it down and see that it's practically the same, right, inside and outside, and you feel like the whole purpose or the whole conflict kind of gets resolved right there, because it's essentially mirroring,
Yeah. When there's a difference between internal and external, this is when we have conflict.
Yeah.
And what the Buddha is saying is, don't do that. See earth as earth. Internal, external, it's just earth.
Yeah.
And so don't do this measuring. Let the body or let the awareness of the elements. You can use the sense of difference to show that there's this conceiving, because the conceiving creates the separation. Yeah, I'm feeling this hard seat. There's just and if we go into the actual sensation of sitting down and the contact, we'll notice that actually there isn't a boundary between these, and that the boundary softens as we begin to simply observe the elements. And this is why the idea of the elements in classical references developed, because they were an experiential description of what was an everyday occurrence. We can experience the earth, we can experience fire, we can experience water, we can experience air, we can experience space, we can experience consciousness. We can't experience helium or lithium or magnesium. Yeah. Now, that's not to say helium, lithium, magnesium don't exist. They do, but they're not in the realm of our verifiable experience. And so that's why they're developed. They're a way of describing. And depending on how you slice and dice this describing, there could be other elements. So in the Chinese system, there's wood and there's metal, but this is again just another way of describing experience. And so the conceiving comes when there's this sense of separation. As soon as we have a sense of separation, it's me against the rest, whatever that represents. And so I find this idea of using the elements as a foundation for wisdom very interesting, because it means we have to come back into where the elements are expressed. And the elements, largely speaking, are expressed in the body. So then the body can become a source of wisdom. And I think, sometimes we can feel that the body is something down there, and all our meditation activity is somewhere up here.
Yeah.
And we need to reintegrate. Because if we reintegrate, then, I think that's what the embodiment of the wisdom is what actually then enables us to take it into our daily life, leads to the behavioral change. Because if we begin to experience it in the body, in our daily life, we notice when that changes. And the energetic is very helpful for doing that, because the change that we notice is when we take things personally. I mean, and this is fundamental to Bhante Vimramsi's teaching, is that we build this tension. And we need, in a way of experiencing and being in our body, which makes us very sympathetic to the arising and manifesting of this tension. Okay. Indra, how did you get on?
Now, encountering Dhamma talks after a gap. It's interesting. Thank you, Hugh. So I'm thinking about how one can enter the jhanas and yet not cultivate wisdom. That's, I think, something that, yeah.
Well, the cultivating the jhanas was something that was present in practice in India prior to the enlightenment of the Buddha, because his early teachers taught him to get up to the realm of nothingness and then to the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. And what he said is there is still more. And so the wisdom, if you like, that I'm alluding to, I mean, it's not saying that the jhanas aren't high states of learning and understanding, but the wisdom that was absence in those teachings was the concept that there was more. And so the aspect of wisdom that was missing was related to what is that relationship to more? What is the perception that something is missing? And so wisdom is the understanding of what that missingness was. So I've no doubt that the early teachings developed wisdom under a certain sort of category and classification, and that there can be many insights. It's not a sort of a numb state. But what the Buddha described as the difference between the early practices and what he practiced, and this is in another sutta, is the development of the factors of enlightenment. And that's why they are the factors of enlightenment. That these practices didn't take, in the Buddha's awareness, to enlightenment. And what was missing? The factors of enlightenment. And part of the factors of enlightenment are investigation. And this investigation in a particular way, and that is seeing dependent origination, seeing the Four Noble Truths, seeing the three marks of anicca, dukkha, anatta. Yeah? This investigation was absent.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yeah. So, and one of the distinctions that Bhante Vimramsi made was the difference between absorption jhanas and what he called the aware jhanas. And if we look at MN111, one by one as they occurred, we have Sariputta's description of going through the jhanas, and all the time investigation is there, intention is there, attention is there. Yeah. So they're not states of absorption, they're states of greater awareness of the process that's going on. And that's part of cultivating the understanding and the wisdom. So that process is very interesting. Whereas the implication from that is that what he was being taught by his teachers was an absorption jhana, where an aspect or factor of the jhana is taken as an object, and the mind becomes absorbed in that factor as an activity. Now, there are many noble traditions, and some of them in the Buddhist environment, which uses the absorption jhanas. And what they say is that once the mind is fully absorbed in this, you know, it achieves a state such that when it comes out of the jhana, it can reflect back on the past experience and the current experience in a way which brings insight. And what Bhante Vimramsī said is, well, what if you work through with the aware jhanas, then as you go through this process using the 6 R's, you build samatha, this absorption, equivalent to the absorption, but the samatha and vipassana together. And there are suttas in the Pali Canon where the Buddha says, samatha and vipassana are 2 oxen pulling the same cart. They have to work evenly together and not separated. So they are different perspectives on the teaching of the Buddha. But I personally, I've worked with one for many years, for 22 years, and I've worked with Bhante Vimramsī's way of working with this for now, I think it's 18 years. I find this approach to be one that generates similar insights as the previous one, but integrates into daily life in a way that my previous practice I found very, very challenging to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And Nanda, how are you doing?
That's a brilliant Dhamma talk. Thank you very much. So I'm trying to understand, am I writing and thinking that when I'm in samadhi states, when I'm practicing sitting meditation and I'm in samadhi state,
Okay, can I just reframe your question at that point? The working with Bhante Vimramsī's approach of collectedness, and generally speaking in the Buddhist literature, samadhi is not a state, it's a process. Now, under yoga, other yoga teachings, Patanjali and such like, samadhi is used as a word to describe a physical state, and there are different samadhis. But within the Buddhist teaching, samadhi is a process rather than a state we achieve.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much.
Is that all right?
So, yeah, that's fine. So when I'm meditating, I think it's much easier for me to kind of give up the identification, not mine, not I, not myself. But I need to integrate that when I'm come out of meditation in my daily life. I need to integrate that into my daily life.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Okay.
in another way, these 4 foundations I apply when I'm in meditation, but also I need to apply these 4 foundations when I'm not in meditation.
Yeah.
In daily life.
Okay. So what Bhante Vimramsī would say in this situation is that to start to use the 6 R's in daily life. So recognize when your mind's got distracted from what you're doing, 6 R, and come back. What I would extend that, because I work through the Sakita Yoga, I work with the energetic body, and I find the energetic body hugely powerful, is that when I'm working with the energetic body in daily life, I can keep my body, physical body, relaxed. So then what I'm very interested in is whenever tension appears in the physical body, and I include the brain as part of the physical body, because when that tension appears, I'm being taken out of my energetic, because the energetic does not operate so well when there's tension in the physical body. And I'm back into my physical body. And there are 5 markers for that. The body feels heavy, the breath becomes more labored, the joints feel tighter, the mind feels tighter, and often the body temperature goes up. And so I then come back into my energetic body. I relax my physical body. That often will then show me the engagement I have with the circumstances or the conditions I am experiencing. And then, I can complete the 6 R's at that point. So this enables me, if you like, to work through the somatic, the physical body, at times when maybe my mental awareness is playing catch up. So the sensitivity to this tension is very helpful. Amay has just asked me, could I explain what I mean by the energetic? Yes, the energetic body exists in many different traditions, from the Maori of New Zealand to those in Hawaii to the whole Indian tradition of the Kundalini and the Chinese tradition of Qi and the rest of it. They often have very different expressions and development of the energetic. For me, the energetic is very, very simple, or the way I choose to apply it is very simple. If we bring our awareness below the navel, about 3 fingers and halfway in the body, there's an energetic center there. If we give our intention to be supported here, we can physically relax our physical body, and we don't collapse. And for those of you who've been on retreats with me, I do some very simple exercises which are very surprising to people, because what they find is that although they don't feel any different, they don't feel strong, their body has become very strong by simply doing this. And so coming back into this energetic expression within the physical, within the body, I can relax my physical body so much more. So then I don't have to choose what tension is keeping me upright, so I'm not like a jelly on the floor, and what tension is caused by my attachment or aversion to my experience, in other words, craving. What I can do is I can come back and release all tension, so I don't have to make that distinction. So this is, if you like, something which I like and I incorporate within the 6 R's of recognizing my mind has got distracted. Okay, now that might be recognizing my body has built tension, turning my attention back. So that's redirecting my attention. So I'm releasing away from what I've taken personally. And then in the classic 6 R's, we'd be relaxing the tension around our brain. Well, the brain is part of the physical body. And Bhante Vimramsi would then extend that out into relaxing in the body. So I relax in the body, but I make sure that I'm back in my energetic, because then I can relax the whole of my body, re-establish the energetic. Then I return, re-smile, and return to my meditation object. So this is something that I constantly work with in daily life. So it's encouraging me to have the same approach as I would in my formal meditation. So Nanda, I don't know how much of that has answered your question. Please, please come back.
That's a brilliant answer. Thank you very much, Hugh. Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. I think this is really, really important. And that's why I like this sutta, because it places the physical body at the center of developing wisdom. And that's important. The mind is also at the center. But the temptation is to feel that wisdom is an intellectual understanding and it's not necessarily a relationship to the body. And in the previous talk that I did, I was talking about how mindfulness or freedom of mind and freedom of body both need to be developed. And interestingly, the Buddha said that through freedom of mind, we deal with aversion, and through freedom of the body, we deal with attachment. And he said both of these need to be developed together. So that is a very interesting perspective as well. And again, this working with the elements is another aspect of working through the physical body. So like we can say in the mind, I need to be like water. But what does being like water mean? Well, being like water means that you adopt the shape of whatever the vessel is. You know, that's a quality of water. You don't insist on something being a particular shape. The water doesn't go, I will only go into a cup of a particular shape. Water goes into a cup of any shape and fills that shape. So whatever the circumstances we're in, being like water means that we fully embrace those circumstances for what they are. We don't try and insist they're a different set of circumstances. But we don't get caught by those circumstances. So we're not like ice, which has then adopted the shape and can't be another shape. When the circumstances change, the shape changes. That's like the water being poured into another shape cup. It adopts that shape. It doesn't mean that you're endlessly accommodating, but it means that you fully recognize the conditions that you're in this moment. That's what being like water is. Because only if we fully recognize the conditions we're in can we then move forward from a place of truth. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. So, well, thank you very much for continuing to listen and for your questions, because the questions really bring out more information. And sometimes the questions will really make me ask myself, what do I understand by this? And that's really helpful for me as well. So thank you very much for your questions. And so let's finish with a closing, the closing prayer. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much, May.
Thank you so much, Hugh, and everyone who dialed in. Thank you. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
We just- Bye.